The story begins by following co-pilot Ben and Captain Rich before yet another flight. Unlike Ben, who spends his time alone in the hotel, Rich enjoys his time off without worrying about work. He goes out to have fun and enjoy the night with a flight attendant. Meanwhile, Ben remains isolated in his room, clearly restless. Lost in his thoughts, he receives a call from his wife, Nadine. During the conversation, she tells him that both she and their son miss him and mentions that she saw the message he had sent. Ben comments that his schedule has been changed once again, but Nadine does not hide her frustration and asks when he plans to come home. She makes it clear that she understands his suffering, but believes he cannot keep running away from his family forever. Before the conversation can continue, Ben receives another call and has to interrupt her. A colleague from the airline offers him a new route to Shanghai. Without hesitation, he accepts the assignment. She warns him that it will prevent him from returning home, but Ben replies that it is not a problem, showing that he is still avoiding reuniting with his family. He then calls Nadine back. Before hanging up, she makes only one request, that he remember that their son needs him. The next morning, we meet Dan, one of the passengers who will be traveling to Shanghai. While using his tablet, the device's battery runs out. To solve the problem, he connects it to a power bank and stores it inside his suitcase before continuing his journey. Shortly afterward, Ben reunites with Rich, who seems excited to be working alongside him again. During boarding, we are also introduced to Penny, the flight attendant who will be part of the trip. While Ben and Penny head toward the aircraft, Rich undergoes a quick inspection. At the same time, Dan checks in his suitcase after placing inside it a tablet connected to the power bank. A detail that seems unimportant at the moment, but which will end up having serious consequences. On the way to the plane, Ben sees a child telling her father that she is afraid of flying before boarding. Noticing the father's difficulty in calming his daughter, Ben approaches the family to help. Declan explains that the girl, Cora, is simply afraid of flying. To ease the situation, Ben makes a joke, but fails to get a reaction from her and eventually walks away. Before he leaves, Cora asks him if he is the pilot. He replies that he is the co-pilot and explains his role in the cockpit. She then comments that he seems too old for that, which makes him laugh. Shortly afterward, Cora reunites with her brother Finn and her stepmother Jaya just before boarding. Before heading to the plane, Jaya places a tracking device on the boy. Meanwhile, Lily is waiting for her team at the airport when a rival group approaches. Hutch, who is drunk, starts bothering her, causing an argument. Jim intervenes to defend her, and the situation is only controlled when Hutch's coach appears and pulls him away. In the cockpit, Rich looks at a photo of his former family while waiting for the final flight preparations. Shortly afterward, Ben informs him that everything is ready for departure. After takeoff, the flight proceeds normally. Later, Rich leaves the cockpit to rest and another pilot takes his place. During a conversation, the colleague mentions Ben's son's illness. The subject makes him uncomfortable, and realizing this, the pilot decides not to insist. Later, a brief turbulence hits the aircraft, but causes no major problems. During the flight, Dan tries to get earplugs from Zoe, and upon discovering there are none available, improvises in a way that ends up amusing the flight attendant. Meanwhile, Declan tries to get closer to Cora and asks her to be friendlier with Finn, but the girl ignores him. Shortly afterward, Declan and Jaya slip away to be alone. At the same time, the power bank stored in the luggage begins to overheat, creating a spark of fire. Finn, after his tablet battery dies, goes looking for his parents. After being tricked by one of Cora's pranks, he ends up meeting Matt, who invites him to play on his tablet. In the cargo compartment, the power bank finally starts a fire. The alert quickly reaches the cockpit. Ben and the other pilots initiate emergency procedures and contact air traffic control. The control center informs them that the nearest airport is hundreds of miles away. Faced with the situation, Ben begins descending the aircraft and asks for Rich to be called back. Upon returning to the cockpit, Rich is informed about the cargo fire. The crew then tries to deal with the emergency as time begins to run out. Meanwhile, Cora starts looking for her parents and brother inside the plane. While the pilots head to the cargo compartment, Cora goes to the bathroom and calls for her parents, but receives no response. Upon arriving at the fire, the pilots find the flames out of control and try to fight them. During the emergency, the burning cargo breaks loose, strikes several cylinders, and causes an explosion. Shortly afterward, one of the cylinders is launched through the plane and hits a passenger, killing him instantly. The impact also causes Declan and Jaya to hit their heads and lose consciousness. At the same time, the damage to the fuselage opens a hole in the aircraft, spreading chaos. Objects begin to be sucked out, and several passengers are injured. Amid the panic, Cora is nearly pulled toward the opening, but Lily manages to save her at the last moment. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Rich and Ben decide to reduce the aircraft's altitude even further. Oxygen masks are deployed, and panic quickly spreads throughout the cabin. While the passengers try to protect themselves, Declan and Jaya remain unconscious in the bathroom. During the emergency descent, luggage comes loose and strikes several people. After stabilizing the aircraft, Rich warns that a crash landing will be necessary and asks everyone to remain calm. However, the situation worsens when additional damage affects the plane. One of the engines is compromised, and a rupture in the fuselage begins sucking out objects and passengers. Dan, who was in the bathroom, manages to hold on and narrowly escapes. With no alternatives, Ben contacts the control center. The response confirms that there are no nearby airports and that they are over the ocean. Faced with this, Rich and Ben realize that the situation is even worse than they imagined. The situation spirals completely out of control when another engine begins to fail. In the cockpit, Ben and Rich try to buy as much time as possible, but it becomes clear that the aircraft will not be able to keep flying much longer. Amid the chaos, Cora leaves her seat in an attempt to find her family. Penny manages to catch up with her and keeps her safe. Meanwhile, Finn remains under the care of Zoe and Matt. Realizing there is no chance of reaching an airport, Rich focuses solely on increasing the passengers' chances of survival. Shortly afterward, the crew announces that impact is inevitable. In the final moments, the pilots perform one last maneuver to try to control the crash. The aircraft manages to touch down on the sea, but the journey is short-lived. Upon hitting an area filled with submerged rocks, the plane's structure suffers severe damage. The violence of the collision leaves several victims in its wake. After the crash, the survivors are left adrift among the wreckage. In the cockpit, Ben tries to wake Rich, but soon realizes that water is flooding the area. Meanwhile, Penny places Cora in a safe spot and goes searching for other survivors. Shortly afterward, she finds Ben trying to free Rich, who remains trapped in the wreckage. With the water rising and the windows beginning to crack, Rich asks them to bring the emergency axe. At first, it seems he intends to amputate his own leg, but he soon reveals that he has another plan. Amid the wreckage, Jim desperately searches for Lily, but cannot find her. Meanwhile, Matt and Finn become trapped in a section of the aircraft that sank vertically. The two end up cornered in the lowest part of the structure, dangerously close to the water. After much effort, Matt manages to free himself and braces against part of a seat. He then calls for help, and Zoe responds from above. To assist him, she throws a flashlight into the wreckage. With better visibility, Matt tries to find a way to rescue Finn. Far from the cockpit, Lily survives the crash, but faces a new scare when something attacks her from beneath the water. She manages to escape, but notices a wound on her leg and becomes terrified. Meanwhile, Rich's situation becomes increasingly critical. Trapped in the wreckage and losing blood, he realizes he will not be rescued in time. With water flooding the cockpit, the captain convinces Ben to leave him behind and prioritize his own survival. Before saying goodbye, he makes one final request, that Ben return to his son. Outside the wreckage, Penny stays beside Cora, while Ben notices that one of the victims is still alive and tries to help them. In another section of the fuselage, Zoe risks herself to reach two trapped survivors, nearly getting injured in the process. During the rescue attempt, it becomes clear that Matt and Finn are trapped in a section of the plane that has sunk all the way to the seabed. At the same time, Declan and Jaya regain consciousness. Upon waking, Declan panics over the disappearance of the children and tries to open an exit while water floods the compartment. Elsewhere, Lily senses that she is not alone in the water and begins being watched by a creature hidden in the depths. Rich, who remained in the cockpit, meets his end when the structure finally gives way to the pressure of the ocean. With Rich dead, Ben assumes leadership of the survivors. His priority becomes helping an injured passenger and locating other people who may have escaped alive. Sometime later, Penny asks when rescue should arrive. Ben explains that help may take even longer if the ELT, an emergency transmitter used to report the location of crashed aircraft, is not functioning. Realizing that the signal may not have activated after the crash, Ben makes a risky decision. He points to the equipment, which drifted away from the wreckage, and prepares to swim toward it. Penny volunteers to retrieve the emergency transmitter. Before leaving, she promises Cora that she will look for her family. Meanwhile, Matt manages to revive Becky, a survivor. However, Zoe warns that the water is rising, forcing the group to abandon the wreckage and search for a safer location. On the surface, Cora and Ben notice something strange in the water. When a body is dragged into the depths, the two realize there are sharks in the area. Desperate, they try to warn Penny, but she cannot hear them. Without wasting time, Ben and Cora set out to help her, unaware that a shark is already approaching the flight attendant. Trapped inside the fuselage, the survivors discover that they cannot simply leave without putting everyone at risk. As a result, the group is forced to look for another way out. Meanwhile, Ben and Cora arrive too late to prevent a tragedy. Amid the shark attack, Ben must also confront one of the creatures to protect both himself and the girl. In another section of the wreckage, the situation becomes more complicated as the structure begins to fall apart piece by piece. In Matt's group, the tension continues to rise. Attempts to remain optimistic fail, and Finn ends up venting all the fear and frustration he had been holding inside. Among the survivors on the surface, Jim realizes that the wreckage will not support everyone's weight much longer. Despite Hutch's resistance, other people agree with the boy and begin entering the water to reduce the load. During the movement, the group finds Lily completely terrified and manages to bring her to safety. However, the situation worsens when sharks appear and launch an attack. Hutch's coach is taken by the creatures, and one of the young men who tries to help him is also killed. Shaken by the losses, Hutch loses control and blames Jim for what happened. The argument turns violent, but Ben arrives in time to intervene and prevent things from getting worse. After restoring order, Ben begins coordinating the survivors. Meanwhile, inside the wreckage, the group realizes that time is running out and starts searching for an exit. Zoe suggests crossing the flooded area to find an escape route. Although she wants to take the risk herself, Matt decides to go in her place. The flight attendant tries to convince him to abandon the idea because of his injuries, but he remains firm in his decision. Before leaving, Matt admits that he has a good feeling about the two of them. After leaving the wreckage behind, Matt manages to reach the surface. Amid the chaos, he encounters Declan, who is desperately searching for his daughter. However, the reunion is short-lived, as a shark appears and kills him before his eyes. While this is happening, Ben tries to organize the survivors. Some begin looking for someone to blame for the disaster, but he interrupts the argument and reminds them that the priority is staying alive. He then instructs everyone to use the rafts and life jackets to increase their chances of survival. While the group follows his instructions, Ben finds the ELT, the aircraft's emergency transmitter. Noticing that Cora has wandered off, he hands the device to Dan and runs after her. In her search for her father, the girl ends up putting herself in danger. Fortunately, Ben arrives in time to save her. Shortly afterward, another shift in the wreckage throws several survivors into the sea. Amid the chaos, Dan worries only about saving himself. During the confusion, he loses the ELT and even causes another passenger to fall from the raft. When Ben discovers what happened, he is furious. News that the emergency transmitter has been lost spreads despair among the survivors. Even though he was responsible for the device, Dan refuses to admit his mistake and tries to blame Ben. At that moment, the group spots Jim calling for help while trying to keep Hutch safe in the water. Lily begs them to help the two. However, Dan insists on abandoning them to their fate. Jim and Hutch are surrounded by sharks, and the boy falls into complete despair. Dan reacts with hostility and tries to impose his will, challenging Ben's authority. The tension escalates until he physically attacks the pilot. Even after being knocked down, Ben gets back up and makes it clear that they will not abandon the two men in the water. Faced with Ben's determination, Dan finally backs down. Ben then reorganizes the group to attempt a safer rescue. Dan still tries to switch rafts, but is rejected by the survivors, who no longer trust him. As the water continues to rise, Zoe and the other survivors are left with less and less safe space. Finn tries to understand how much longer they have until rescue arrives, while Zoe calms him by saying that Matt should return soon. Elsewhere, Jim and Hutch are finally pulled from the water safely. After the ordeal, the relationship between the two changes, and their former hostility gives way to mutual respect. With few options remaining, Zoe prepares to leave with what little safety equipment remains. She explains that there are only a few life jackets available and assures Becky that she will return for her. The two then enter the water, and Becky, who had remained strong until then, finally reveals just how terrified she is. During the escape attempt, Finn and Zoe discover Matt's body, leaving them devastated. Even so, they manage to reach the surface, where Finn mourns the loss of his friend. Upon spotting a raft, a new hope for survival emerges. Meanwhile, the group discusses what to do, and Dan insists on returning to his family at any cost. Lily then spots an airplane in the sky, reigniting hope for rescue, but it passes by without noticing the survivors. Even so, Ben believes they have been seen and that help is on the way. Shortly afterward, Zoe is attacked by sharks during the crossing and is injured. Once aboard the raft, she loses consciousness due to blood loss. Then a shark strikes the raft, and Finn falls into the water. During the night, rescue teams begin aerial searches, while a Chinese fishing vessel is directed toward the crash site. After being informed by civil aviation, the captain understands the seriousness of the situation and agrees to participate in the operation because he is closer to the wreckage. On the rafts, some of the survivors try to rest while others remain on watch. Hutch thanks Jim for saving him and encourages him to get closer to Lily, sensing a possible connection between them. Elsewhere, Ben tries to comfort Cora, who believes she was abandoned by her own family. She blames herself for not protecting her brother. To comfort her, Ben shares his experience as a father and shows her a photo of his son, trying to reinforce that there is still a chance for a reunion. The rescue helicopter finally arrives in the area, reigniting the survivors' hopes. Upon spotting the rafts, the crew launches flares and prepares to begin the rescue. However, the approach attempt spirals out of control when one of the rescuers is attacked by a shark. Unable to understand what is happening, the pilots are horrified when they see the woman reappear severely injured before being pulled underwater once again. Chaos engulfs the operation, and the helicopter loses stability, crashing into the sea. During the crash, the rescue cable strikes one of the rafts and flips it over, throwing the survivors into the water. The fishing vessel arrives and locates the survivors, bringing new hope. Amid the confusion, Dan climbs onto one of the rafts, but his actions end up causing a fatal accident involving another man. Shortly afterward, the group sees the rescue vessel, but it stops before approaching because of the reefs. Without oars and unable to move forward, they remain stranded in the water. Meanwhile, Ben realizes that Cora is not with the group and finds her on top of the airplane wreckage. He then enters the sea and swims toward her despite the danger surrounding them. The survivors watch Ben and Cora's rescue attempt, while sharks continue circling the area. Ben manages to reach the girl and convinces her to return with him, despite her emotional distress. To distract the animals, the ship's captain creates a diversion using fish, providing a brief window of escape for the two. Elsewhere, Dan is attacked and killed by a shark before anyone can react. At dawn, the rescue is finally carried out. Some survivors reunite, including Jim and Lily, while others try to cope with their losses. As Ben tries to comfort her, Cora remembers Finn's tracking chip and uses his phone to check the signal. Upon discovering that her brother is still nearby, the ship heads to the location and finds Zoe gravely injured. Before losing consciousness, she reveals where she left the boy. Shortly afterward, Finn is found and finally reunited with Cora. Emotional, she apologizes to her brother for what happened. In the end, the survivors are brought to safety, and Ben is able to contact his family, informing them that he is coming home.